Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And we're still making our way in the 1920s with Jack, now John Ford, as we talk about Cameo Kirby. And boy, what an interesting options we had to watch this movie.
Yeah.
But my pal Rowan's here to talk about what we could tell happened.
Yes, indeed. It's me. It's your go-to
Yeah.
for movies that either most people hadn't heard of or don't want to watch. Because I'm always looking to expand my film roster, and this was one that I can say for certainty I would not have watched if not for this show.
There you go. Which interesting way you phrased that, because I'm going to shamelessly plug an article that I just wrote for guyatthemovies.com. If you want to think about ways to broaden your cinematic horizons, I wrote out a whole bunch of ideas, so go check it out. Rowan's doing one of them, which is if you're still a student, take film classes. So Rowan kind of has that built in.
Exactly.
But it's interesting because last week with Mike, we only could watch an eighth of the movie because that's what was literally left. So that was
Right.
an interesting discussion. And now we couldn't even get anything in English. So that's fun. I want to know where the UCLA cut is because apparently
Right.
they have one too. But for those who haven't tuned in to Welcome to the Wasteland before, we have three segments. Coming attractions, our feature film, and recommendations. So let's get started with coming attractions, which for July 28th, 2023, Disney's Haunted Mansion is probably the biggest release. I've actually heard some decent buzz from people that got to go to like early Disney screenings of it, but that's coming out with a star-studded cast. Netflix has a couple of films dropping, including an Ellie Kemper rom-com. Nick Cage is in a new thriller, Sympathy for the Devil. The Beanie Bubble is now getting released on Apple TV Plus. But Rowan, what's the film you're most looking forward to?
So I so Haunted Mansion is definitely the biggest release of the week.
Yes.
But my pick is a little indie horror film called Talk to Me,
Yeah.
which is being distributed by A24 in the States. It's actually an Australian film, and it's sort of like supernatural horror,
Mm-hmm.
um, written and directed by two YouTubers, which is super hit or miss usually
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like making a major motion picture. But everything I've heard and seen about this movie just looks fan frigging tastic. This premiered at um a festival in Australia, but then at Sundance this year, where it like
Mm-hmm.
as I if I read it correctly, it just made waves and went
Yep.
on a lot of people's radar because of that. And I have been hearing nothing, like honestly, really nothing but good things. And I don't even have to feel bad about promoting this movie, because A24 has complied with all of SAG-AFTRA's demands,
Yep.
and they're still letting A24 film movies during the strike because they are very kind, they're very respectful,
And they're
and they
not a
pay
bunch of a-holes.
exactly, and they pay their actors um properly in ways that for some reason big studios cannot. But anyway,
Yep.
I haven't even seen a trailer for this one, because when it comes to movies that I'm intrigued about like this one, I'm sort of trying to avoid marketing as much as I can,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like it makes the theatrical experience or first watching experience, however I'm watching it, a lot better. But like, and even the plot on Wikipedia is just very surface level, and for
Yes.
that I am just ridiculously excited. It looks like everything a supernatural horror movie should be, and I cannot wait to see it.
So I got to see half the film due to circumstances. Life happens.
Yeah.
And I had seen the trailer at least once, but I couldn't remember the trailer because it had been such a long time since I saw it. But from the first half of this movie that I saw, it is one of the funniest, scariest movies of the
Oh,
year.
oh, that's
And
what I like to hear.
yeah, and it's very much like they feel like real teenagers and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And I realized within 5 seconds that this was Australian. People
Yeah.
started yelling in Australian accents.
In Australian.
In Australian
Oi, oi,
accent,
mate. Yeah.
it's like I'm like, wait a minute. because I didn't even notice that from the trailer. I guess I don't remember much from the trailer, but
Yeah.
yes, I'm very excited to check this out when it comes out this weekend. Now, getting into our feature, I have some background here. So this is from 1923. This is indeed the first film that John Ford was credited as John Ford instead of Jack Ford. We have John Gilbert, who plays Cameo Kirby in the film. Jean Arthur, famous actress, making her screen debut in this.
Mm.
This is based off of a 1908 play by Booth Tarkington and Harry Leon Wilson. It was turned into a 1909 Broadway adaptation and was previously adapted in 1914 by Dustin Farnham as a silent film and was remade as a talking musical in 1930. And there are two copies of this left alive. UCLA Film and Television Archive has one, and Cinemateca Portuguesa has the other. Can you guess which one's on YouTube? The Portuguese one.
It's
So
like it's not just the Portuguese one. It's like a low resolution TV rip where even if you could read or speak Portuguese, you would not be able to read the intertitles or
yeah.
understand what was going on anyway. So the fact that it was in another language really didn't like set back at all.
Well, and in general, the basic plot of this film is Cameo Kirby is in love with a woman, and he winds up being framed for the murder of her father. And like basically, you can still tell like he witnesses somebody getting shot off a boat, and then everybody thinks he did it. So that's kind of the main crux of this film, which is like an hour and 11 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
But Rowan, what are your general thoughts?
So from what I could tell,
Yes.
this seemed like a pretty good movie. I'm just gonna review this movie on on the level that I feel like it is fair to do based on
Mhm.
what I could see and what I could understand. So my process in watching this was I watched it, was not 100% sure what was happening
Mhm.
for most of it. But what I did was I watched it and tried to understand it as best I can. And then afterward, someone left like there's no summary on Wikipedia or anything, but someone left a review on IMDb with the whole plot basically written out, which was
Okay.
incredibly helpful. But based on like what I was actually seeing, like this is a pretty well directed movie, especially for the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
A lot of the blocking and like shot composition feels very modern, or at least like not necessarily modern as in 21st century, but like definitely like later 20th century style.
Mhm.
um the leading man, Cameo Kirby himself, is a very handsome man. You
Mhm.
could even tell that with the incredibly low resolution. And honestly, the performers, the actors, are very expressive, as
Mhm.
silent film stars had to be. So it's not it wasn't impossible to tell
Yeah.
what was going on, but the barriers of the resolution, the language, and there's also no music. Like this is a silent film. In the YouTube version, it's dead silent. There's no
Yep.
music, there's no nothing. So there's also that to get past. Um and I will say the summary that I read afterward like helped me appreciate it a lot more. Like I actually think that the story sounds pretty interesting. I just
Mhm.
didn't get a lot of that when I was actually watching it.
Yeah, because I could tell the crux of the film. Like the scene for which you see this person get shot and then do a great stunt falling off of a boat. Because, you couldn't CGI that stuff back then. Like,
Right.
it's actually somebody falling off a boat. That was really well framed and
Mhm.
shot, that sequence, because there was a lot of depth to the shot,
Right.
and like somebody like hiding behind a thing and him off in the background. And from there, it's like you could tell there's a lot of seediness and underhandedness going on. And from like the very opening of this film, you can tell this is like that. It's got that big southern plantation, big riverboat kind of feel to it. So it has that kind of personality, which is a little bit different than, John Ford's most known for Westerns, and most of his earlier films were Westerns. So, like, this has a different kind of setting and feel to it. And, there's some thrilling moments. Like, there's a boat race at one point
Yeah,
with
that
two
looked really,
riverboats.
really good. Yeah.
So, like, there's certain things about this that even with the barriers, like, you could tell it's really well done, really well directed and engaging. And there's some thrilling moments. And, like, obviously, what you lose out of it is some of the emotion because you can't 100% tell what the relationships are between some of the characters.
Mhm.
So, like, it took me looking up later that, like, it was the woman he loves father who's the one who gets shot. So
Right.
that complicates things and it adds an emotional layer to it. And once you
Absolutely.
have that information, it's like, oh, well, that makes things interesting. And there's just some good shots here. Like there, even at the very beginning of the film, there's like this card shuffling scene with
Mhm.
like this close up of hands and stuff like that. It's just you could tell, like, from my experiences with these John Ford films early on, he used those kinds of close-ups to add some depth to the films, and obviously has a really great way of directing because you can see this kind of stuff in The Searchers and earlier Stagecoach, which
Mhm.
is still like, what, 15 years away from this one. So a lot of John Ford growing to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like especially the boat race I thought looked
Mhm.
very, very good, especially
Mhm.
for the time and considering what they would have had to put into it and how that would have had to be filmed, I think is just like a monumental feat for the time in terms of filmmaking.
Like actual riverboats
Yeah,
racing against each other next to each other and
yeah,
being able to set up the cameras and getting all the shots and stuff that they needed.
right.
It's miraculous. And that's one of the cool things about looking at these early John Ford films. It's like he had an eye all the way back then.
Hmm.
And obviously he passed that forward. Just watch the Fablemans.
Yeah.
But Rowan, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to add in about Cameo Kirby?
So the way that like Cameo Kirby itself is a very distinctive name.
Mhm.
And the way that it seemed that they were treating the character in the movie made me wonder if Cameo Kirby was like an established character. Like this was like just another Cameo Kirby adventure. It's not,
Yeah.
but it easily could have been.
Mhm.
And I just thought that that was pretty fun that the name stuck out to me that way. And I feel like based on what we see of him in this movie, I feel like he could be like a character who has adventures like this.
Mhm.
And I feel like that would be pretty interesting. And I guess this film's in the public domain now, so he could be. You never know.
Could come back. I know
Yeah,
Harry Carey's like early three performances in John Ford films, like he's playing the same character. So like
right.
he's even having those kinds of like early adventures and stuff like that. But I know going on after this, um, my next film that I'm going to be tackling is North of Hudson Bay, which my buddy Griff's going to be coming on next week for that episode.
Nice.
And then I'll be getting in contact with, my crew to
Of
see who's
course.
going to be coming on for like the next films and stuff like that. But the next ones are still covered, but it'll be interesting because I'm still like I'm trying to see I'm still like months away from getting to like Stagecoach.
Yeah, like the big ones. Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting continuing to watch some of these films and seeing them more consistently being a little bit longer and hopefully finding some better prints of them. But getting to our last segment with some recommendations, Rowan, you have an interesting one.
Yes. So mine is a movie called Batman Ninja, which if you've never heard of it is an anime
Mhm.
film set initially set in Gotham City, but then it vaults Batman and some of his allies and villains all the way back to like feudal Japan.
Mhm.
And essentially the Joker becomes this big like crime daimyo, and like Two-Face, Poison Ivy, Bane, they're all there. Harley Quinn, they're all there. And every single thing that happens in this movie just gets progressively and progressively crazier. Robin has a pet monkey that is never explained. There are like a bunch of different Robins there that like there's a joke about them like being hard to tell apart. And I don't know. This is one of the like, and also this movie is not well regarded, which I'm surprised at. And that I think that might be because some of the bold strokes are
Mhm.
just like maybe a little too bold and a little too weird
Mhm.
to really like jive with Batman fans. But especially if you're like a casual Batman fan, I think you're gonna like this a lot more than the like type of diehard fans who feel like a sense of ownership over the character,
Mhm.
because this does something entirely different with Batman and his whole lore and mythology that like works. And I I don't know. Every single choice is progressively more insane, and it's just incredibly entertaining. And it's short too. It's like 80 something minutes. So
Mhm.
it's a very easy watch. So I would check this out if you have even the remotest of interest
Yeah,
in
because
Batman.
I have a nice chunk of a collection of like the Batman animated films and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And there's one that's like a martial arts film that I watched. I do have Gotham by Gaslight, so like the Jack the Ripper kind of twist of
Right.
Batman.
That's another one I want to watch. I just love the idea of
Yeah,
Batman in a different time. The Doom that came to Gotham was one that came out pretty recently that I really, really loved too. That was Batman in like the 20s and stuff like
yeah.
that.
Um, so like they do a lot of creative things with that, which is pretty cool. So I do have a couple recommendations. One, it's a big one. Saw Oppenheimer, and this is probably my number one film of 2023 at this point.
Nice.
I felt devastated and a sense of existential dread upon the end of this movie. And I'm really thinking about like, I don't know if there's another director with the spectacle that could have captured the gravity of how significant the events of this film are. And Nolan just killed it. It
Mhm.
was, and Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt are so amazing in this, and an insane cast. Like there's some people in this film that I didn't even know were going to be in the film that were kind of shocking to find out were in the
Yeah.
film. This is a film that really makes an impact, and you can tell Nolan knew this was his most important and significant film he made up to this point. So
Right.
highly recommend. One watch list one that I got was Gaslight with
Mm.
Ingrid Bergman, and Joseph Cotton's in it in a supporting role, and Angela Lansbury. Yes,
Ooh.
this movie is kind of where they coined the phrase gaslighting, because boy, does Ingrid Bergman get gaslit hard in this one by her deplorable husband. This is such an incredibly written, well written script, and the performances are so fantastic. Like, Ingrid Bergman just gives an incredible performance with so many layers in this. And one of my rewatches of my own movies is Life of Brian, which I'll be interviewing my buddy Adam Ritchie from Sif Pop for his next interview on Lost in the Wasteland. Boy, do they pull no punches when they
Yeah.
want to take a look at Christianity and Judaism. But the most important thing is to remember, look on the bright side of
Side
life.
of life.
Just the whole entire crew of Monty Python's just on like their
Yeah.
A game in this. And
If Holy Grail didn't exist, that would be my favorite Monty Python movie.
they're just so great. And like this is biggeth dicketh. Michael Palin is so committed in that
Yeah.
scene. So fantastic. Michael Palin is my favorite Monty Python member.
Mhm.
I love Michael Palin. I wish he had a bigger career. compared to some of the rest of that
Yeah.
Monty Python. But we
Yeah.
do have Brazil, we do have Fish Called Wanda, and we do have Death of Stalin. So I
There
can
we go.
still appreciate Michael Palin.
Yeah.
But that's a wrap on Welcome to the Wasteland this week. Rowan, thank you so much for coming on to chat some
Of
old
course.
school John Ford.
Always.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.